Hello and welcome back to Pandemic Playground with Dave. So today we have another experiment for you guys, which is following up from our too much speed experiment. And now we're going to do some crash testing with random items. Alright, so I put together a lot of random items, small grid, for this experiment. And that is to do a bit of a crash test and see the damage it does for these items. So we have a standard small grid wall here, light armor wall, and it is layered thick, as you can see. It is 9 across, and generally the rest that we're going to do is about 45 long, but this one was the original one and didn't lag, so I left it as is. Alright, so of course we're going to have our base. It's going to be this light armor block wall for the crash test, and the ones that didn't lag I put here, and it's gonna be small grid or small batteries is one thing, and another one is decoys. So just want to see how these perform or how these look when you crash right into them. Another change is that I took my multi-tool ship, got rid of the subgrids, because some of you have mentioned that the subgrid doesn't work really well with the crashing, so scratched the subgrid and just designed it a little bit more on the front and put a little bit of like I guess a triangle angle to it a bit, but it's pretty much the same ship. I just got rid of the rotors, grinders, and welders and added this armor piece here. So now we're ready to ram right into these walls. So first things first, we're gonna do the basic wall here, and then I'm going to move on to the batteries, and lastly for now the decoys. And then we're going to move on to some more silly ones which really put a strain on my PC, and it took hours to put together, to be honest. Alright, so we're going to get ready. I do have the speed mod on, but I set most of these up to hit close to 100 meters per second, or a little bit over 100 meters per second, to crash into these things. The coolest part about this, every time I look on the left hand side, the decoy one, it changes pictures depending on how far you are. So as you see here, image just changes right there. So it's a bit of a image glitching out there. As you see there, it's pretty interesting. When we get closer, you're gonna see that it gets smaller, and then when you get further, it gets bigger. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But yep, here's gonna be our first 3 wall crashes or crash tests. We're gonna have the regular wall, our batteries, and of course the decoys. So once we're ready, in 3, 2, 1. Alright, so here's the first 3 that we have in terms of crash tests using this new small ship, or the multi-tool ship. So the first one initially crashed right into pretty much the middle of the whole entire thing. Let me just back this guy up a little bit. And as you see, it lost the nose of the thing. Cockpit is still attached. And look at the damage that it caused. So this was about 100 meters per second, a little bit over if anything. And it didn't go through the wall this time. So that's pretty interesting. In the previous episode or experiment, it went straight through, but this time it didn't. But it did cause an interesting shape right inside the wall here. But if we look into the battery one, that one's a little bit different. So if you see here, it has a hole in the back. Some of the front pieces fell off, and it took a lot of the batteries out. As you can see, I don't think you can back this guy up, but let's just see. Oh, we could. Okay, perfect. We have that one thruster in the front. That works out. So I'm surprised the cockpit is still alive, but look at the damage here. This looks insane. Oh, just stacking the battery just looks pretty cool. But having everything damaged like this, not too bad. It damaged a little bit on top behind some of these, so I may have went a little bit faster, 100 meters per second, but I mean, that's what it is. I should have took out the speed mod, but I didn't. But that's the damage there. And lastly, we have the decoys. The decoys, however, looks pretty interesting actually. The decoys took out the cockpit actually in this test. And a lot of the parts kind of fell right into it. So the decoys, yeah, definitely did a lot of damage to the ship itself. And it looks like the piece is still sticking out right here, so that's pretty interesting. So yeah, if I were to crash into something, probably not decoys, because that really destroyed the ship itself. Right, so on to the next one. So what we're going to do here is pretty much clear everything. So basically, entities, grids, control A, remove. And it's going to take a little bit of time to remove everything, but that's the nature of the game. We have way too many pieces. Alright, so that's gone. So what we're going to test next is going to be an interesting one. And as you see here on my blueprints is the wall of wheels. So unfortunately, I did have to clear out all of the things that were there before, because this thing, for whatever reasons, lags quite a bit. As you see here. The one's place is quite laggy, so what I'm going to do is going to restart the game really quick and put the ship back in and just drive right into it and see what happens. Alright, so the collision was pretty interesting where the wheels just kept on falling down. Because yeah, the wheels are connected from bottom up, so that makes it pretty interesting. And it is still quite laggy right now as it is currently. So it crashed. I think we still have the cockpit intact. It's quite laggy, but it's because probably things are falling off and just kind of laying down as is. But it didn't go through, so it did cause somewhat of a bumper. But we did lose a lot of top wheels for some reason or somehow. Or, you know what? Actually, it probably hit the middle and the wheels dropped down. That's why I did that. But that was an interesting crash, but definitely didn't go through. So a little bit of a bumper with wheels. But of course, let's go on to the next thing. Alright, so we're going to pop into the blueprints and see what else is left. So we do have a wall of reactors, or small reactors at least. So let's plop this guy down and see how it crashes. So honestly, I did not expect the reactors to kind of lag up the game a little bit, but it does. Ever so slightly, just a tad. It's not visibly laggy, but it's more of like a input lag. So when I press down on WSAD, either one, any one of those keys, it probably like a half a second before it actually moves a little bit. So it's a little bit off, but let's see how it looks when you crash right into it. Right, so crashing into reactors, quite the spectacle actually. We lost our cockpit. Yep, definitely lost the cockpit. It blew right through a hole and scattered some of the parts. So that's interesting how that kind of works. It looks pretty cool in this way. It looks like a basic kind of crash, and it opens up a little bit. So not too bad with reactors. So nothing too crazy. The only cool part is that it does spew out kind of the green smoke a little bit. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah. But again, unfortunately, I have to do these one at a time because it's almost impossible to run them all at once because they're super laggy. So let's go clear this up and see what else we have to do. Alright, so here is one that I did not expect to be extremely laggy, and that is the wall of balls. So a whole bunch of balls glued together to form a wall, it creates quite the lag. As you see here, it's still streaming, still trying to produce the blueprint, and I'll paste it as soon as possible. But that was really unexpected, but it was really laggy for the amount I put there. And the amount I put there is probably close to 5,000 balls in that sense. Or I guess since we're in the holiday season, we call it our ornaments. Alright, so here we go. It's loaded. Here are all our balls that we're going to just plop down right there. And once again, this was really unexpectedly laggy. Definitely wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to work just as any old blocks and make it easy to load. But no, this one was pretty difficult. Alright, there we go. So it finally loaded. It took a little bit of time. Not as long as kind of the next one that's going to come up. But this one, again, it was very unexpected that it took forever to load. Actually, it's more than 5,000. Let's count how many we have. We have a layer, I think 9 layer here. Yeah, 10 layer. A 10 layer of balls and probably 45 across. Yep, 45 across. And it should be about 25 high. Yep, that's definitely it is. So that should be roughly about 11,000 balls that we're gonna crash into. So let's go get prepared and crash right into it and see how it looks. Alright, so the wall of balls looks actually pretty cool, to be honest, when it's crashed into. It has the sparks, the smokes, and everything like that. Although most of the smoke is probably coming from the ship itself, but I can't back it out because it is gonna merge right into the wall. I can get rid of it, so let's just do that really quick. There we go. And yeah, look at the damage it has done. So the wall of balls looks quite interesting how it's just completely destroyed in all form and fashion here. So we have like all the way down here and then all the way up here, a little bit through. So anytime when there's a little bit through like this, I think I may have went a little bit faster than 100 meters per second, but who knows. And it definitely did go through just a bit, not too much. And if we go to the other side, you see, yeah, actually not too much at all, to be honest. But the close-up of going inside the wall of balls is actually pretty interesting too. It just looks very matrixy in some ways. That is an interesting piece to it. But yeah, all these balls are actually set at like 0 or default mass. So nothing too crazy about it. I don't think it's going to make a difference if I change it. But the crashing of it, quite laggy, but it looks pretty interesting. So what is next from here on out? Alright, so the next one is going to be my least favorite because it took forever to build, and I think it's going to take forever to load as well. So I'm going to spare you the load time and jump right into it when it's finished. Alright, so it took quite some time for it to load, and again, my least favorite one because I had to build this very slowly. So what I mean by that is basically 45 across, 25 high, and it looks like we have about 4 rows of the rotors. But this took forever to build because the moment I build one layer, the whole entire machine freezes up and then it lags the whole entire game once it's finished. So then I have to quit, restart, and then build another layer, wait for it to be done, quit, restart, and build it again. But let's see if it's worth it to crash into it to see what it looks like. So again, these are just small grid rotors with the heads attached to it as well. So we're going to take the time and just ram right into it and see what happens. Alright, so the laggiest piece of them all, rotor walls, and it is actually a pretty cool crash test because once we rammed into it, all the little rotor heads fell off and we pretty much went pretty deep into it, as you see here, where we have a piece of, I think that's the bottom, that's outside there. But yeah, look at all the little rotor heads that came off of it basically. So this was an interesting crash. Not my favorite in terms of damage, but not my favorite to load up because again, it took forever to get this one up and running for the most part. Right, so let's clear this out once again and see what else we can do. Right, so another interesting one other than the rotor one is the pistons. So we're going to load up some piston wall, a piston wall here, which is not as laggy as the rotor one, but it is still a little bit laggy. But the rotor one was the most nightmarish thing to ever do. And when we're talking about too much of something, you definitely can't have too much rotors because it will pretty much lock your system for the most part. Alright, here's our piston wall. Let's hop on into a vehicle and crash right into it. Alright, so the piston wall is been crashed into. Looks like we still have the cockpit. I think we can... Yep, we kick this person out and... Oh, we are stuck in there. It is jammed right into those pistons. So it definitely caused a lot of damage, as you see here. That's actually pretty interesting. A lot of the piston itself is destroyed, but the head is still there. So that's... that's something different. But yeah, it's lodged in there. It's not going anywhere. It's stuck. So crashing into a wall of pistons seems like an interesting thing, but I still think the wheels are your best bet for a bumper. Oh, it made a shape that we do not want to show too much of. Alright, so we cleared all that. Let's see what we have left. I think we did everything so far. The last one, of course, which is highly requested, was a wall of warheads. So let's plop on a whole bunch of warheads. Like so. And luckily the warheads weren't too laggy, so that's a pretty decent thing. But I'm sure it's going to lag once it kind of explodes. So I think I need to turn on the warheads and arm them. Here we go. So we armed the warheads and we're ready to go. So let's see what happens. Alright, so what happens when you crash into a whole bunch of armed warheads? Destroys every little thing basically and leaves a big old hole. That's what happens when you run into a large amount of armed warheads. I'm sure if you ran into a lesser amount than what I have, it'll produce almost the same exact result, but probably a smaller hole. That's about it. But let's try one more thing. Let's try it without arming the warheads and crash right into it and see what happens. Alright, we have our warheads. We're not going to arm them this time, but we're just going to crash right into them and see exactly what might happen. Alright, so crashing into non-armed warheads, actually it was a very interesting crash. So it did destroy a lot of the warheads. It made a big old crater and wall or hole here, and pretty much destroyed the entire ship itself too. So we just got little pieces here and there. But yeah, that broke a lot of things, and it looks actually pretty cool. Is that as crazy as it being all armed? Probably not, but that wasn't too bad at all. So why not arm the rest, get into the ship, and crash into it first person. Let's see how it goes. And there goes the lag. It's so bright, I don't know what's going on. I'm pretty sure everything's gonna be destroyed and I'll be out of the ship in a second. But we're gonna wait for it to stop lagging. And there you go. Everything completely gone once again. Kind of added to the hull. But that is today's crash test. I want to say thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.